Good afternoon and welcome to the public meeting of Randwick Local Planning Panel on the 8th of February 2024. First, I would like to acknowledge that we are meeting with medical peoples and pay my respects to the elders past and present and people in the I'm the chair of the panel and my name is Annalise Toole. Joining me today are Deborah Laidlaw and Peter Romey as expert members, and the community representative is Michelle Finnegan. The panel has undertaken inspections for the DA items on today's public and electronic agendas. We have been provided with an assessment report prepared by council staff, who have also briefed the panel on each application. Today we have a number of people registered to address the panel for the DA 61 the Corso Maroubra. The order of the speakers will be firstly objectors and then those supporting the application, including the applicant or their representative. Each speaker will be given 3 minutes and any extension of time will be at my discretion as chair. The panel has been provided with copies of all the submissions received in response to the public submission of the application and forwarded a copy of late correspondence. Therefore, there is no need for speakers to repeat in detail the points made in those submissions or by previous speakers. Please focus on the key points that you want us to understand and to consider. The applicant may wish to address issues raised in the council's report, including in response to conditions and issues raised by objectors. We may ask questions of the speakers to clarify our understanding of what is being said, and we expect that each speaker will be heard in silence when they are addressing the panel, and that courtesy and respect will be observed throughout this meeting. I ask that everyone mutes their microphone unless they are called upon to speak, noting that we have the ability to mute all attendees. After hearing from speakers, the public meeting will be closed and the panel will then deliberate and make our decision. The minutes of the panel's decisions, including our reasons, will be available on council's website as soon as possible after the public meeting. And you should be aware that the panel meetings are recorded and that audio recordings will be uploaded to the council's website. Each member of the panel has been asked prior to the meeting to advise whether they have a conflict of interest in relation to any item on the agenda, and I can confirm that no conflict of interest is declared. So we'll now proceed with the item on the public agenda for 61 the Corso Maroubra, and we have an objector, Sally Fenton. So there.
Sally Ferguson, actually.
Oh, Ferguson, sorry, you're down as Felsen.
Yeah, so it's my maiden name and I work under that, but my registered ownership is Sally Ferguson of 60 Sackville Street.
All right, thank you.
So thank you. I am speaking on behalf of the Sackville Street affected residents, so 60, 62 and 64. Our biggest objection is the loss of privacy, and I note that there has been amendments made to make the balcony and the middle level smaller, and that a condition has been put on for frosted glass. But there's nothing to stop someone standing on the balcony and looking right into the back of our property. Our living area is at the back, and it's the same for number 62 and number 64. I asked in my original objection that screens be advised to put up, and that hasn't been taken into account. I can't see any acknowledgement of that. The other question we have is the vegetation that has been proposed to make the privacy screening at the back of number 61 the Corso. What's the name of it? It's the Tristaniopsis, I think is how you pronounce it. That's quite a slow growing tree. So we request that it's a beautiful tree, absolutely love the idea of it, but can mature trees please be planted in the area, because it could take years. At the moment we have vegetation that creates privacy for us. It would be great if that vegetation can remain for the duration of the build, if it's to go ahead, but then to be replaced with something that will be at a similar height. they're the main objections. The other one was the loss of views. I've spoken to a few different people at council and they keep saying, but you've still got views in different areas. Interestingly, apparently all of us still have views to the south of our buildings, except that number 43 Sackville Street has just had a DA approved and we lose our south views. So it kind of feels like we're losing view in death by a thousand cuts. So there are main things. The privacy issue is the one that affects our everyday lives. And that's the one that we chose to speak of first. And that's the only other thing I wanted to say was I know the arguments that Lena, who's up next, I believe after me, I know the points she's going to make. I won't repeat them, but I wholeheartedly support the challenges she's having with the build. And that's it from me.
Thank you. Any questions?
Sally, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Sorry, I missed at the beginning which properties you were
Representing.
Yes.
So we're on Sackville Street. So number 60 Sackville Street, 62 Sackville Street, and 64.
Thank you, Sally.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you. The next speaker is Lena Salamova.
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello, thank you. All the neighbours of the broader Sackville, the Corsa block, came distressed about this proposal, and we're hoping that this panel will advocate for the community. If this proposal wasn't that excessive, there wouldn't be as many concerned residents. We are aware of the 11 non-standard conditions. However, they only tinker around the edges and not addressing the main issues, which I'll list below. Overshadowing, in particular 63 de Corso, including significant reduction in solar access to private open space in midwinter. Number 2, significant reduction in solar access to living spaces, reducing the ability to passively heat number 63 in winter along the primary wall, open edge of this semi-detached dwelling. Just wanted to note this is the only wall that has windows in our dwelling. Building footprint. Although only slightly in excess of permitted FSR, the designed volume and non-contributory elements create a significant bulk and defensive presence, both inefficient and demanding of mechanical heating and cooling. The lift introduces a vertical space that impacts the FSR and increases the bulk, directly contributing to negative impact on the neighbours. Building height. The renaming on the 4th floor to an attic has not resulted in clear 3 stories, but remains a 4 clear stories by stealth. Environmental issues. Conditions exist around mitigating excavation risks, but how will these be implemented and how will any damage to adjacent properties be rectified that directly impacts number 63? Has groundwater been assessed given the significant excavation and building into the bedrock? Has the assessment been made on the loss of the existing dwelling and rebuilding in relation to embodied energy, as opposed to renovating and extending? What local government and state policies exist in regard to net zero? Local character. If the existing character building is to be lost, what material elements are used in response? Why the building is grey? If we paint every building grey, we have a grey city. The panel is surely cognizant of this happening in many other buildings across LGA. In closing, in its current form, we very much clearly reject this proposal and request that more substantial and meaningful redesign should be required to address ongoing issues. In addition, we're concerned about the precedent that this development might set for this area should it go ahead in its current form. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Which property?
63 the Corso.
Any other questions? All right, thank you. And then we have Andrew Martin, who's speaking on behalf of, which property is speaking on behalf of?
59, Chair.
Thank you. Yes, you can start now.
Many thanks. Andrew Martin, Town Planner. The report's quite detailed. There's quite a number of conditions that the planner says that makes this development acceptable. It's quite a list. So just looking or asking the panel to ensure you're convinced that this should be approved with this number of changes leads me to believe that it's probably pushing the boundaries. We still say it is, and would ask you not to support approval of this application. Yes, those conditions do lessen the impact, but I think more broadly just need to look at the overall design of this proposal with its basement. It steps up at the ground floor. It really doesn't make any effort to sort of try and minimise or sort of fit. It's 4 stories. Would ask the panel to consider whether this upper level is really justified. And the way the building is arranged, it's actually stepping up. They want to grab the view, but they're on the lower side. So I think when you're looking at the cascading feel of the street and that sort of amphitheatre setup, I think this sort of tries to stick its head up and not respect that sort of that layout and form. It's sort of like wearing your hat in the front row, but they're not in the front row, but they're sort of trying to grab that extra level and be as high as they can, where they can, and everywhere they can. They are trying to push the boundaries with their, super generous staircases, all sorts of things, right? So at the end of the day, I think that FSR that they're over, even at 7 square metres, 10 square metres, that actually causes the building to have a roof element. And without that extra GFA, they don't have any right or claim to that roof over. And that roof is causing view loss to our clients. And so at the end of the day, that even that 7 square metres pushed back out of that bedroom, there is ways and means of reducing that and setting it back. They should be compliant with the FSR. They've got all the free kicks on the parking, the storage, all the access ways. They've got free kicks galore downstairs in the basement. That's fine. But then they still need to push the boundaries at the upper level with that extra floor space. And that master bedroom, can understand why they want it, but that should be pushed back and they could reconfigure that whole room in it. And it wouldn't be that generous, but that's on the 4th level. And that's what we're saying to the council, that that's a real stretch and a real push. We understand why they want it, but at the end of the day, they're over the FSR and there's no sufficient environment planning grounds in my mind to warrant pushing the extra FSR in the roof, create the view loss with that extra FSR that they're gaining. So I just think it needs to be toned down, refuse, come back. I think that's, we'd like to see RLs in the conditions of consent. If the panels of mind to support it, we say they shouldn't. If they did, then, specific RLs for the roof, reach maximums. We don't want internal ceiling heights. They just go 2.4 and then just add a really thick roof and come back later. At the end of the day, we want a maximum. We also had asked the panel to make sure that if it could be reduced even further, so they actually have the 2.4 for 2/3 of the room to satisfy the BCA. I know they've got some 2.1 pitching points, but it's a curved roof. So we just feel that whole upper level, that's causing angst, view loss. It's over the controls. It's a pretty big building. It's quite prominent. So I just think it's just pushing the boundaries a bit too far. Thank you very much, panel.
Thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, I'd just like to clarify with the view loft, the top level of that dwelling. Can you just run us through which rooms there are and where you say the view loss is, and specifically which view loss is arising from the height of the building?
Page 50 of the report, figure 43.
So there's an earlier photo, isn't there, from the front bedroom? I think.
Yeah, there is another photo, figures 41 and 42. That I guess there is some pluses and losses from that's the bedroom at the front. But I guess because this building's been arranged, that photo doesn't do it justice. That's just a very quick snapshot of when you enter that room. This building has an architectural design to it. It's basically grabbing its sun, its light. Its entry is to the building, to the dwelling, is actually over this void. So it's all been architecturally designed. And I guess that upper level, that free-flowing space, you really do get an appreciation of the water, the connectivity of where you are, that spatial connection to the ocean. And I guess any loss of that view or that horizon and that connection, I guess what we're saying is that's caused by the roof at the upper level where you've got the extra FSR.
Yeah.
Now, even
So,
yeah. Anyway.
I'm just actually, so there's a photograph on page 39, the report.
Is that 39?
39? From the front bedroom. So that's not impacted.
That's not impacted, no.
No, okay. So the next one's on page. Okay, so 41 and 42, is that the same? That's the next bedroom along, or?
No, that's the same bedroom.
Their bedrooms.
Yeah, that's a
So
bedroom.
that's not affected by, they're saying that's affected by the height?
That's right, yeah.
And then obviously the next one is 43. And then from the back, the midpoint on, there's no view, apart from when you get to right to the rear.
That's right. There's still a view from one of the bedrooms over the roof, but you know, the further that roof is pushed back at the front, you can see the leading edge of that in figure 44. You can see the ridge level, the hip, and then the ridge level continuing to the north. I guess you can see the horizon. I guess so. That's really the touchy point or tipping point for us, is where they start to claim the extra FSR, because that could be a flat roof. And so
At the rear, you say.
at the commencement of that front part of that upper level, that bedroom could be a flat roof, and that's what it would need to be to comply with the FSR. So yeah, I think that's where the pinch point is.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Yes, Andrew, can you just perhaps unpack a little bit more what you think could be done in terms of modifying the form, if I put it that way, of the proposed building to address those view issues?
I think, I mean, it's, like I said, there's a few the architect obviously wants to create a theme inside around these stairwells and things like that. And they're super generous. And I think if you're going up in the air and you're causing view loss and you're over the FSR, you'd need to be a little bit more just not as, I guess, letting the architecture dominate the outcome. It needs to go, right, I need to fit in this space. The space might be a little bit more compromised up top. So I think the stairwells could be modified. Again, the language for the building, they want to keep that because that's the wow factor. But we say up at the upper level, you're getting to an area where you probably shouldn't be and no one else has got anyway. So, you know, could you cut it back? Can you massage it and maybe drop some of the area you got in up there? To just bring it back, just taper it off the front, so it doesn't present as, you know, 3 to 4 stories. And again, you've got activity up at that level. It's not just a bedroom. I mean, it's a bedroom, but you know, at the end of the day, it's an open area where noise escapes. It's just adding another level compared to its peers around it. So I guess that's always been the touchy part of the design, and I think there can be things done with lowering still. I know the council planner has done a good job of sort of compressing it a bit, but it still needs to, and it still needs a little bit more, I think, considering what the impacts are because of you know, the FSR. That's the roof.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
So Andrew, I think from when you were saying, answering Deborah's questions, you seem to indicate that most of the view loss that you're concerned about is essentially caused by the front of the building, the
Yes,
roof at the front of the building. So in terms of the changes that you're looking for, and that roof incorporates the terrace, et cetera, so as part of the changes, are you think, you know, that trying to pull back that roof so that it's sort of that it starts further back in the building? Is that one of the things that you would, I think you mentioned a flat roof as well before.
Yes, was that directed to me, Madam Chair?
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, so it's the overall height is an issue because that creates that eye-line plane, but also bringing it back as well does help on that angled view from that we saw in image 44. Well, sorry.
At the back, the height isn't having any impact on the views. It's, as I understand it, it's more at the front. Is that correct or not?
My client's property, no, because the back is expressed in figure 44 and 45. But it's hard to step the roof because it's serving one room that's already got, you know, it's hard to sort of drop the roof. You can see, Madam Chair, from figure 44 on page 50, that ridge height is just below the horizon. So the ridge height is a point of contention, as well as, you know, trying to push it back and helping the view at figure 43, which is that central atrium, and 43, pulling the ridge back from the street does help in that regard, but also lowering helps from the other view as well. So yeah, the setting back of the upper level does help the view from figure 43 in that atrium.
All right, thank you. The other question? No. All right, so the next objector is Ravi Kaduri.
Hi everyone. So I'm from the 55, the Corso, the building right behind Andrew's property. And in there you've got certain images that have just been spoken about. So satisfied that this has been addressed in terms of blockage of the view of multiple units within the building. So this is unit number 4, number 6, number 5, number 3. So 4 units are being impacted directly by this. But also in addition to that, there is the concern of loss of privacy. So there is a space within the section, and excuse me if I'm not using the right terminology. I'm new to this sort of panels. Is facing directly into two of the bedrooms of unit number 5. And with that creates certainly a loss of 2 out of the 3 bedrooms of that particular unit. So it's not into the lounge, but it is directly into the building, and it's directly in line. That's from my perspective. Now you can, I don't know if anyone else is here from the building, but we certainly had quite a lot of concerns about that all across, both in terms of light, in terms of impact of loss of view, and loss, of course, of value to the building as well.
Right, so can you just explain again exactly where the view loss is coming from?
So if you look if I'm looking at the same document that we were just discussing, if you do look at image number 43, image number, which is taken from room number, unit number 4.
Yeah.
If you look at unit number 6, which is again impacted by this, and at the back of unit number 4, again, that's completely going to be impacted by this.
Right. So just clarifying, you're the owner of number 5, is that
I'm
correct?
5. I'm number
Yes,
5.
but you're
So my
speaking on
concern,
behalf of other
I'm
owners
also
as well.
speaking of the others because I'm not sure if anyone else is here. My biggest concern, as I brought to here, yeah, there will be some impact in terms of the view. I'm more than happy for Andrew to have spoken and addressed the room in regards to that. I understand that, but it is a direct concern for me when it comes to privacy, because it's literally out the window and there's nowhere to hide.
And the privacy, just explain the room that
So
where it's
if-
coming from in the proposed development.
So from the proposed development that's
Yeah.
being shown, there is a section that's showing up as being like, maybe I'm using the wrong terminology, but as a balcony. And that's an open space to the side of the building facing directly across up the road. So if we look at image number, so you can see this in page number 32. So you're seeing part of that in there. And from my understanding, that is the top level again. So that's the top level that's causing quite a bit of grief to quite a few of us. And in the design panel to the side, it's showing direct eye view to the units across.
Can you give me a bigger number that you're looking at?
I'm looking at page number 31.
31.
Let me just make sure that I'm looking at the right one. I beg your pardon. No, sorry, it's number 34. I beg your pardon.
Page 34.
Page 34, figure 22.
Thank you.
So just above the W209, just above that.
I don't understand. Okay. That's the question.
So
Sorry, we were just flicking through.
I know. I'm
Can you just go back to your starting point? You were trying to talk on page 34 of the business paper.
So this is, so it's showing up. I don't know if I can share a screen here and show you, but it shows 30. It's page 34 out of 102. Is that correct?
Yep.
Yeah.
What figure is
So and it says D1/24 on the side, and it says figure 22 in there. Proposed northwestern elevation.
Figure 20.
22.
Figure 22.
On the diagram, they've got numbers on the windows. Can you tell me which window you're looking at?
So just above W209, do you see that area which is open?
In the
So where
room.
you're looking in the roof?
Yeah.
And that's cut out. So that was explained to me that was going to be some sort of a balcony.
No, when we look at the plans, that's not shown as being a balcony, it's shown as being a void to an area underneath that is open, that has sort of screening over it. But I think it's something that we can ask the applicant when
That'll be great.
now they're about to speak. So I think
I'd
probably-
appreciate that, because when we had the town planner in the bill, I think he was a town planner, but the one who sort of shown us the papers, we went through what that impact might look like, and we spoke about this particular one. So apologies if I'm addressing it
No,
incorrectly,
that's
but
fine.
that's
That's
a
fine.
concern.
We'll
Thanks.
get that clarified. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
All
That's
right.
it for me.
Thank you. All right, so now we have representatives of the applicant, David Wampum, the planner, and Brian Bass, the architect. So David, presumably you're speaking first.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll start off. Just to clarify, did you get late correspondence from us?
Yes, we did.
Okay. I'll try not to repeat it because I think it summarises our position well. And did you also get the section?
Yes.
Yes, excellent. Just one other clarification. Council support staff told us that we would only get 3 minutes and we needed to present together. Is it all right if we get a bit?
Yes, we've allowed extra objectors to speak. So
Yes.
I mean, obviously, keep it as short as possible, noting that we will probably be asking you questions as well.
Will do. Yes, there is a bit to unpack. I'll just quickly commence. Basically, in summary, we reluctantly accept the conditions of consent from council. We accept the approval, but we just have concerns with conditions G to J, which is in relation to the height. I'll come back to that in terms of views, but in terms of some of the issues that were raised by the objectors, from people from Sackville, I understand views are an issue. We'll come to that. The main issue seemed to be privacy. In terms of the separation, our building is 9 metres from the rear boundary, so we consider that to be sufficient privacy separation without the need for any further privacy measures. And there was also note about planting along that rear boundary. In principle, we have no objection to the planting or putting a condition on in relation to higher planting for privacy, but we do note that if the higher the planting goes, probably the less view they'll have. So either way, happy for a balanced approach and happy if you want to put on a condition. In terms of our adjoining property to the east, 63 the Corso, I think there was an issue about overshadowing. My understanding is they're north-facing, they have north-facing living rooms. Whilst we concede there will be some additional overshadowing to the western elevation, that is large. The reason it got sun was largely a result of the undeveloped nature of the single dwelling that was already there. Whilst we appreciate it will create some additional overshadowing, it does not result in a non-compliance with council's controls, and their primary living areas and open space still receive 3 hours. FSR was raised. This is a curious one. This was only raised to us 2 weeks before this agenda, even though this application's been with council for some 520 days. It all appears to hinge on the inclusion of the voids in the lift and the court case of Chamois versus Lane Cove. Interestingly enough, Chamois versus Lane Cove, all stairs and all lift shafts were included as FSR, but Randwick have not included FSR for the top level staircases, which in my opinion, I think is more consistent with the decision in Connoisseur Investments, which excludes the top level staircase because that's considered a void, and also excludes lift shafts because simply there is no floor to measure 1.4 metres above in a lift shaft. I say that it is not FSR, so we are a compliant development, but notwithstanding that, in order to move this forward, we've provided a clause 4.6 if the panel is not satisfied with our definition of that. In terms of the height, after numerous amendments, we are now compliant with the height as the building is proposed. I think we have a height of 9.49 metres. In terms of council's condition, I believe they are looking to reduce the height by 0.78 of a metre. I'll come to that in terms of views. But in terms of the story height, our building is a 2-storey building by definition. The basement is a basement and is not a story, and the attic is an attic and is not a story. So council's DCP contemplates accommodation within the roof, which is what we have provided. We comply with the overall height, the wall height, subject to conditions which we accept on the setbacks. We comply with the setbacks. Therefore, we have a fully compliant building envelope. In terms of privacy, I believe the owner of number 55, the Corso, raised concern about that cutout at the attic. That is going to be a solid wall, so there will be no window overlooking them. And in any event, the separation distance is well over 9 metres. Coming to views, this is largely raised in the late correspondence, but I think it's important to summarise the important points. Firstly, we are subject to conditions. We are a fully compliant envelope in terms of height, wall height, setbacks, and any view loss as a result of a compliant envelope, some people could say it is considered to be inevitable. What council have not considered in their assessment is a very important part of the tenacity assessment, is that step 4 states, and I quote, the applicant should achieve the same development potential and amenity and reduce the impact on the views of neighbours. What council is seeking to do via the imposition of conditions G to J is to significantly impact on the applicant's amenity. In this regard, it reduces the floor to ceiling height of the ground floor level to 2.4 metres and reduces the floor to ceiling height of the attic level to 1.6 to 2.3 metres. So if you're walking around in the attic, you're more than likely the average person will end up banging their head on the ceiling. We had a fully compliant development in terms of height, and in terms of the floor to ceiling heights for that attic level, it was 2.1, 2.8 as originally proposed. We consider this important to the amenity of the applicant because, firstly, it is accommodation within an attic, which is contemplated and is rather prevalent around the Randwick local government area. The second major issue with regard to the applicant's amenity, which has not been considered, is that the reduction in the floor to ceiling heights and the overall heights will also impact on on the occupant's potential views. This is mainly because of the height and design of number 63, the Corso. The further the proposed building is dropped, the further impact it has on views from that attic level. Given that council has already reduced the size of the terraces on the levels below, the view impact of the future occupants is severely diminished, and we say at a disproportionate rate to the amount of view gain that will be achieved in terms of the adjoining properties. So I'll just come to the adjoining properties as well. We've done a fairly detailed analysis of the views, which council has kindly included in pages 38 to 46 of the printed agenda. These pictures were provided by council, and looking at the following pages in terms of pictures and council's view assessment is that there seems to be a number of pictures that council have not given us. And there also appears to be a number of directions where views are achieved, which also does not show up in the report. We have tried to outline that in our view assessment on pages 38 to 46 of the printed agenda. But all in all, we agree with council's assessment that the view impact is negligible to moderate. The most affected property is number unit 4/55, the Corso. And where you will see on the montages that are provided both in the architectural package and in the agenda, that where the building is proposed, there is already built form of number 63, the Corso, and landscaping there. Whilst the building as proposed will result in some further view impacts to those views, we say that it is not significant because there are still significant views available in alternate directions. And we say that the impact is moderate at best. And if there is no more skillful design, in our opinion, that keeps the views of the adjoining property and maintains the applicant's amenity in accordance with step 4 of tenacity. Finally, we say that the objectives of council's LEP and their view sharing requirements, they contemplate a level of impact. The imposition of conditions G to J effectively eliminates view impacts, especially for 55, the Corso, which is the most affected property, because the insisting on compliance with conditions 2G to J would align us with number 59, the Corso, in terms of overall height. But that would mean that number 63, which is lower, in topographically lower, will be higher than both buildings. So it doesn't create the transition that that our original building design did. Don't think there's anything more I need to add. Brian, is there anything that you'd like to add?
No, you've covered off all of the points. I did want to make the point about, from an urban design point of view, which you've raised at the last point, is it seems unusual that council would request, given that we comply to the height and the wall height, that our building on our site should be lower than the building on the low side of our development. I mean, you need to step the buildings up the hill because the Corso gradually rises up the hill. And it feels as if, because an apartment building that doesn't comply with the current zonings nor the current heights got there first, they have a right of veto over all future development on the downhill side of the slope, which does not seem consistent with, I guess, the intent of like development control plans and LEPs in terms of controlling future development. I would also like to just reiterate that there isn't a balcony up on the top level. It is a void that goes all the way down to the courtyard at ground level. And just by way of, because there was raised the issue about the sloping roof and that, our original scheme actually had a flat roof, which allowed it to be a little bit lower than it is, like in the middle and sort of a bit higher on the wall height. Council actually specifically requested that we build the top sloping roof forms as it is done now. And we had extensive negotiations over many, many months, receiving at the time, an email saying it's all good, and then we go on from here. So I guess we have worked diligently with council to try and address the issues, and then to simply say, oh, you've got to do a flat roof now, and these last minute changes doesn't really seem in keeping with our process to date. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Question?
Just to clarify, something you said, Dave, you said that the ground floor was reduced in height. So actually the ground floor stays the same. First floor.
Yes, it does. You misspoke, David.
Sorry, apologies, my mistake. First floor.
That's right. I just want to make sure I wasn't on the wrong track. The ground floor stays the same. The first floor goes down to 2.4 and the attic level goes down to a maximum of, well, you've got to do a maximum of 2.344, which wouldn't be BCA compliant.
It would be for an attic, because I think the attic allows 2.2.
The 1.6 isn't.
The 1.6 is definitely not, yeah.
On the edges, it goes down.
I thought there was a BCA requirement, a certain proportion.
There's a
2.4.
I could speak to that. Habitable rooms have to have 2.4. I also point out that if we lodged to Randwick Council an apartment building with 2.4 metre ceilings, I'd be kicked out, and rightly so, because it's pretty mean. But there is a requirement that the minimum level in an attic has to be 2.1, because that's just to stop people smacking their heads. But you can actually do an averaging over it, so you can go a little bit below the 2.4, but you need to average 2.4 over the space.
But
because it's a habitable room. If it's a bathroom, we can go 2.1 anyway.
Yeah. So on your diagram, you've got drawn 1.63 at the edges and 2.344 in the middle. So that couldn't possibly meet an average of 2.4.
No, it can't. It doesn't comply. That's the point of the diagram is, and we couldn't design a building that people are going to hit their head on the ceiling. It would be just.
So you're saying that even if this was approved, you couldn't get it certified?
Well, we wouldn't be able to get that certified, no.
Okay.
And we say that those reductions are disproportionate to the impacts it causes anyway. As I said, there's two arms of tenacity test 4, and that's the applicant's amenity and the view. I don't think it's balanced in this subject to these conditions. Okay.
So the other question I had was that in terms of Unit 4, which I think you say is the worst impacted of number 55. I mean, there's two ways looking. You can reduce the height more. It seems to me that, you know, for part of the impact is coming from the length of the building. And whether at the front, at the attic level, you've got the terrace set into the roof form. And I'm just wondering if there was some way of maybe slightly opening up that view by pulling that roof form or deleting part of that roof form so it was like a gable-ended roof. The roof was enclosed in a gable-ended roof rather than the hip roof.
So we're discussing the rear of the building. Is that
No,
the front of the building?
If you look at section B,
yes, no, I know exactly what you're saying. I mean, the reality is that the original design had a flatter roof, which allowed us to have a wider footprint on the top floor, which allowed us to pull it back further from the front and the rear edges of the building, because we got our floor area in a more a squarer form of that bedroom rather than a sort of a longer rectangle form. So that's the solution to the front and the rear, any rear issues, is to revert to that.
Council were very definitive that they said they want that top level to look like a roof. So whilst I get what you're saying in that, you know, there are some, the edges towards the front could be potentially pulled back because they come down towards the balcony. It would, I suppose, partially ruin the aesthetic, but it would also mean that the building is read more as an addition rather than an attic.
You see what I'm saying is rather than hip, just you might keep the lower hip, but I don't know, and then have a gable, you know, keep the same height.
You potentially could do there. Yes, you could do that. You could take those that we've got the architecture of those leading tapered roof forms that coming forward serve an aesthetic purpose only. And that was done in conjunction with council's request to develop it from the street perception as a roof form. If we could keep the height and you didn't have those, it would present more of a gable, which is going back to more where we started, I guess. So that's what's the irony of all of this discussion.
And in terms of your views are also to the northeast.
Northeast, yes, sort of diagonal.
So from your upper level, the only views you're getting really are when you go right to the end of that terrace, because you're
exactly. We've cut a hole. Yeah, we have cut a hole, so you get a sort of slightly diagonal view from the bedroom. But yes, they do
impact hole.
Yeah, yes, they do impact our views. You're correct.
And then in terms of the conditions which reduce the size of the terrace to the first floor level, not the ground floor, we're also losing significant part of our view because now we're behind number 63, so it's cutting back our view all the time, and having a disproportionate impact on the applicant's amenity.
All right, so just a few other questions that we've got. I know you're saying you debate whether you're over FSR, etc., and that's in terms of, you know, definition of GFA. But in terms of actual building bulk, there are a lot of areas in the building which are not included in GFA but add to building bulk. So the void that's over the casual living, I think Peter Romney's got a few questions about that one, which do you want to just...
Yeah, for Brian and Mr. Banks, I guess.
Yes.
With the at the rear of the house, there's a casual living area, and then there's an indoor garden area, both of which are open. Sorry, not open. 2-story spaces.
Almost 2 stories. So the casual living area is probably 1 2/3 because you actually do go up, so you can see from the from that corridor going into the
Yes.
casual living, there
Yeah.
is a 4-step rise at that point. So you're going up about 700 mils. So in that space, it's going to be a tall ceiling, slightly under 2 stories. And then the void is, well, the void has got a void right to the sky in some places, and then it's in the 2 stories. Again, when we did the original design of this building, we had nothing over that area and it was completely open. But in conjunction with council wanting us to construct a roof form that encompasses the building and makes the attic read literally as an attic, that's where we ended up with that sort of shape and the space there.
Okay, so when you say there's a ceiling, what the top of that void, if I can call it that, is
Yes.
actually the underside of the roof, isn't it?
We actually have, it is, we have a ceiling, a horizontal ceiling on it, but yes, it's basically the ceiling level where there is no void, like where it's not cut, it's actually the level of the floor of the terrace.
Yeah, so probably half of it is down the side of the roof and then you're underneath the
Walk-in wardrobe.
Walk-in room.
Yes.
Area. And that space has solid walls on 3 sides. It appears to have a glazing. Is it glazing between it and the void?
Which space are we looking at? The casual living. The casual living.
Level 1 plan.
Yes, and you're talking about the casual living area.
The area,
The void over the top of that.
Yes.
Which is separated from the void over the courtyard by what appears to be glazing.
Yes, that's correct.
But
the glazing line below carries all the way up to the ceiling, which is the underside of the top floor. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. And but the what would be the southwest wall, exterior wall to the rear garden is weatherboard.
Yes, it's only glazed at the lower level, and it's solid on the levels above. The reason for being is solar heat gain because it's the western facing facade. So we didn't want to, we have protection of the glazing when it's facing the courtyard. So we can, environmentally it works for us to have that as a taller piece of glass. But the solar heat gain would be very high if we had like a 1 3/4 story level of glass there. And we have the Vagola structure that then provides us with shading to the lower glass on the western side.
Okay. I mean, it would have helped to have a long section through there with respect, but we're sort of working it out. That space, that double height space really does contribute substantially to the bulk of the building in that corner without actually contributing to the amenity at all, really, I don't think. You get some lighting through
I would argue that the very high casual living space is a beautiful amenity, but that's a separate discussion. Again, the original design of this had a flatter roof that was effectively, so see how if I call this a U-shaped building, if we're looking at up there was a flatter roof that just so that the top floor only existed over what I would consider the lower horizontal part of that U and didn't extend to those other spaces. Again, this was all a result of working through to create to create a roof form that looks elegant because we want a nice thin edge and what works very nicely about the roof at the moment is our gutter edge that's perceived is the same height as the gutter edge to the building to the south of us, so it actually works very nicely on the streetscape. But the net result of that is it's expanded the roof footprint out on the upper levels because you've got to go out wider to get to a height to capture the ceiling height.
So would your plans that you had before, as I understand your earlier scheme didn't comply with the height?
It was high, yeah, we'd have to drop it down a little bit.
Would your plans that you had before work with the height that you've currently proposed?
Yes, it would.
Okay. So we could take your
You can have a little look and see where they were.
See about them, then whether you put them
there were a few other things we worked through too. I mean, we don't want to waste time, but yes, that's correct. You can have a look at it, and it all had to drop a little bit to get that to work.
And that was essentially to achieve the number of stories That you wanted a
Yes.
basement and an attic with two
We
stories,
wanted it
as
so
opposed
that
to a 3-story building.
Yeah, I mean, the reality of it is that this site has, like all these things, we only get a little bit of a view that's sort of to the northeast. It's diagonal there, and having and considering that the height of the building direct, like down the hill at number 63 being what it is, if we're below that, like if we don't maximize our height that we're allowed to do on this site, we basically get nothing for the owner of this property and his amenity, and the family's amenity. So that's why we've obviously done it. Everyone can see why we've done that. We're trying to obviously make the best house we can for our client, but at the same time, I would argue that there's an expectation is that everybody who develops up this hill in the future, they're purchasing and developing this on the basis that people will go, right, that's our height limit, and we will therefore, we will exploit that as best we can.
Okay, so just a few more questions about the stair. Generosity was mentioned, and with the void, etc. Can you just explain the logic behind that?
Yes, so the stair. So it was also mentioned the lift. The lift is, there's an elderly parents that live here, so we do need a lift to get through the house for future-proofing that. The other thing, the actual width of the stair rises are only 1 metre, which are not particularly, that's, I would consider a minimum of a house like this. And because it's such the stair is something that the residents would engage with every day. We have I think as architects, we also want to make that a joyous experience. So having a void and a nice lighting and that down there is something that we want to do.
And the other question is in relation to the garage level.
Yes.
One question is about the size of the plant, and I suppose the lobby area relating to the stairs there. And the other question is in relation to the sort of extension that's not excavated but is enclosed in walls that's towards the street, and it has a terrace and a planter.
Yes.
Yeah, above it. So just the logic behind that as well.
So the logic behind that is that the step, there is already a sort of a terracing up on the site as you go in, the landform rises up. What we're trying to do is get planting forward of that space, but if you look on the level above where the terrace is, it does pull back from the edge of that thing. So we were trying to get soil at the level of the terrace on the upper level in order to get planting that can cascade down over the walls below.
So rather than just have planting on ground, you want it to be at 2 level.
Yes, although I would say that terrace level is only about a bit over 1 metre higher than the current ground level at that point, because the land does step up on the site currently.
Yeah, but in terms of the finished ground level, what will it do?
Yes.
The elevations don't have it as that.
Exactly. So basically, if you look at the elevation, you can see there's the lower planter, which is still is slightly raised above the street, which is consistent with the current sort of levels of the garden, as is slightly higher than the street. And then we step up to that terrace level up on the upper level to have that cascading planting over. And then the actual balustrade is behind that. So it's doing the transition at the front to try and couch the house down in the landscape.
Okay, and the size of the plant and the foyer at the basement level?
So that plant is the size it will be. Every house we do has a plant room that's that big, pretty much. We're putting the water tanks in there. We have the pond equipment. We fill it up. I don't think that's excessive at all. And, we do this all the time. The size of the lobby, I mean, that is a function of the location of the lift and the staircase and where it goes centrally in the house above. And the storeroom will be...
Sorry, Brian, you keep going.
No, that's all. I had nothing more to say.
I was just gonna say by definition anyway, they're all excluded from GFA, And in any event, they're all below ground level, so they don't really add to the bulk and scale of the building, but add to the amenity of the occupant.
Yeah, it's adding to excavation.
Sorry, I wasn't aware it was at excavation. Yes, in terms of that, it does. But in terms of the excavation, I don't think it's excessive. I think it's adequately set back from adjoining properties, and there are numerous conditions in relation to dilapidation reports and safety concerns for adjoining properties in terms of it being done properly in accordance with geotech.
Okay. No, it's not taken on the building. On your plans, the site boundary is the red hash line.
The red hash.
Yeah, so
The red dash, dot dash is the site boundary.
Just one technical question. In the basement area, Brian, there's a square which looks like square.
With there's hydraulic.
Just all it's got garage right in the middle of it.
Yeah, so that is if you look at the cross-reference that to the stormwater, I think that's to part of our stormwater management system.
Okay, all right.
So there's that.
Thank you. Oh, the section goes through there. That's right.
all right.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you very much.
Just
One more.
I'm just trying to work out where it is on the plan, but going back to that issue of bed one and whether it could be wider and shorter, you have got, or else you've got pop out into the roof, haven't you? I mean, you could have a skylight or pop out part of the roof.
So can you see on that plan while you're looking, if you're looking at the roof plan, just to help you, so see there's a red dotted thing that with the sort of little curve.
A red dot.
Red where it says outline of previous footprint dashed in red. That's the original DA that we submitted, I guess is what I'm showing, is where that.
Oh, you only look at the attic plan, you mean not the roof plan?
Yeah, the attic plan, sorry, the attic plan.
Mm.
So that's, you know what I was talking before about where the building footprint previously was.
And that red line includes the terrace, or that's just the building?
No, the terrace is exterior to that, but we didn't have all of that big roof form, like that sloping up roof forms going forward of that. So that was effectively, see the little nib wall that went out for privacy, that was effectively I guess the visual obtrusion stopping there.
And that was a flat roof, but
yeah, it was a flat roof.
I'm thinking more in terms of where you've got I'm trying to work out where it comes at. You've got a like an eyelid sort of, not eyelid, what do you call it? A dormer coming out.
Yes.
The side.
The teardrop shape.
Is it the lift? That's the lift, isn't it?
That's the lift. Yes.
It is the lift.
That's the lift.
I mean,
which is lower than the ridge.
You could potentially make the bedroom shorter and wider by doing a similar sort of treatment.
Potentially. The problem is that what it comes down to though is
then putting the hip back.
A flat roof back, yes. You'd have to do that because whilst we're trying to get it into a concealed roof form, if I call it that, what we have at the moment, it's difficult. We have limited. You can't pull it back at the front because then it sort of looks a bit, I don't know, unbalanced or something. Whereas if it's a reverse to sort of the original thing, yes, you could do that. Because I think the thing that's blocking like not blocking, but potentially impacts the view are the bits on the street side that are roof form for roof form's sake.
So around the terrace, essentially.
Yes, exactly. And on the side of that.
Yeah. And what about, I think part of the discussion before with Deborah, one of the objectives was about it being more of a gable form. Yeah,
well, as I say, we could accommodate that. That just wasn't.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, that's food for thought. I think there's any further questions?
No, thank you.
So thank you very much.
Thank you.
As it said in my opening, The public meeting will now be closed and the panel will deliberate on this item on the public agenda and all the items on the electronic agenda. Our decision and our reasons for our decision will be placed on Council's website as soon as possible. So thank you all very much for attending.
Thank you, panel.
The meeting's concluded.
Thank you.
Thank you.